Welcome back to Peteys Pedz. Today's episode, the Dallas Arbiter Fuzz Face.
Hey there, buddy. What's that sound? Peteys Pedz, Peteys Pedz. Hey there, buddy. What's that smell? Peteys It's Peteys Pedz, Peteys Pedz.
So the Fuzz Face is a guitar pedal designed in London by Arbiter Electronics Limited in the autumn of 1966. Should be said, this is my clone in a little candy dish. This is not, but it kind of looks like a real Fuzz Face with this smiley face design here. It produces a characteristic high distorted sound called fuzz. Fuzz. Ivor Arbiter took the round shape enclosure idea from a microphone stand, and it also was the first pedal to include a DP-DT stop switch. The effect became very popular because Jimi Hendrix played it and there were not many distortion pedals around at that time. The gist of the Fuzz Face remains in the simple circuit that uses 11 components: 2 transistors, 4 resistors, 3 capacitors, and 2 pots. The astonishing tones created within them delivering a soft, asymmetrical clipping that changes to hard clipping in both semicycles under the fuzz pot action. Arbiter Electronics manufactured the pedal from 1966 to 1975. Dallas Music Industries did a final batch in 1975 to 1977. After that, the production stopped. During its lifetime, the pedal went through some minor cosmetics but major sonic changes. The Fuzz Face was reissued from 1986 to Y2K, and in 1993, Dunlop took over the production and selling the Fuzz Face in different flavors. Today, both the Dallas Arbiter and the Fuzz Face trademarks are both owned by the Dunlop Manufacturing Incorporated. They're big and round only for purely aesthetic reasons. Inspired by the base of the mic stand, the circuit will fit in a much smaller box. There are plenty of small box Fuzz Face clones. The earliest models were covered in red, light or dark gray Hammerite paint with the Fuzz Face logo in white or black. There was text in the smile. You see this section here? There's an oval cutout that revealed this text that would hint at the pedal's age. The earliest ones would read Arbiter-England. Later on they became Dallas-Arbiter England, and sometime in 1968 that occurred, and since then there has been a variety of words found inside the smile. The very earliest ones are Arbiter-England, then we have Dallas-Arbiter. These days, Dunlop manufactures a number of different finishes and sizes using various transistor flavors. The transistors are the most sensitive part of the design and the whole mythology that has grown up around them. There are 2 main possibilities. Germanium transistors are claimed to be warmer, creamier, smoother sound. Silicon transistors are higher gain with a bit harsher and some more high-end. The germanium transistors are considered to have an overall better sound to this effect, but there are some major drawbacks. Germanium manufacturing is not as consistent and controlled as silicon, and they have shorter lifespan and much more temperature sensitivity. That gets down to this: if you live in a colder climate, you probably won't run into any issues. But for most of us, when it heats up, our Fuzz Faces tend to start pooping out. They can actually cease to function. Specifically, the germanium transistor versions. There's quite a few silicon-based Fuzz Faces, and the jury on that is out. I mean, to be honest with you, if you have a good sounding silicon Fuzz Face that's properly biased and you're playing in a band type of situation, no one in the crowd is going to say, well, gee, this band sucks. That guy's Fuzz Face is silicon, it's not germanium. That's simply not the case, because there are builders who can use silicon to great effect. So it's not like we want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Ultimately, when they switched to more modern, temperature-independent, cheaper, and stable silicon transistors, they were using
BC183, BC130, BC108, BC109, BC209, and BC239.
When considering the germanium transistor selection, there's a whole series of hoops one has to jump through. It's important to select the proper germanium transistor out of a batch in order to find your most effective performance. GE transistors tend to have high leakage and inconsistent gain. The gain variation is crucial in the design, so the best match is to use a low gain in the first stage, something at around 70 to 80 HFE, and a higher gain in the second stage, HFE of 110 to 130. This is a general rule of thumb that I always follow when I'm experimenting, trying out transistors in different circuits, is low to high, meaning starting out low and working up high of your gain staging inside the pedal. This is my go-to rule of thumb. Low leakage is highly desirable. You can't build these things with leaky transistors. You can, but they just will sound like garbage. So this means to the builder, in order to make a properly functioning fuzz face that sings, you're going to be faced with a challenge to locate tailor-made components. Builders tend to purchase in bulk, then they'll go through the process of testing each active component for gain and leakage, yielding just a few ideal transistors from a selection of many. This is perhaps one of the reasons that these types of pedals fetch such a premium on the market. Produced by Dallas Arbiter and also Dunlop, not to mention positive ground, negative ground, silicon versus germanium. There are rare and extremely expensive original units, reissues, we see flat out copies, countless clones, sound-alikes, slight to major modifications. This pedal, it reigned supreme and it launched 1,000 salutes via Jimi Hendrix Star Spangled Banner imitations. When you say fuzz face, you've said a mouthful. The big, almost round guitar effect pedal, first built by Arbiter in England of 1966, descended from the seminal Maestro fuzz tone. Dennis Cornell, who's a designer for Dallas Music Industries in the late 60s, explains a bit more. The circuit is what they call a Schmidt trigger. It is designed to put an AC signal in and get a square wave out. It kind of triggers, which is why at very low sensitivities it can't make up its mind. There were always problems with them, so he would get involved with testing and repairing them because they all just didn't work right. Later on came the NPN silicon transistors, and they were way less expensive and much more stable, although they sounded somewhat more harsh. The Fuzz Factory has a very low input impedance. And this is one of the reasons that it cleans up so well when you roll your guitar's volume down, especially when using single coil pickups. They tend to not cope well being hit by other pedals. Put a wah before your fuzz face and you'll see what I mean. Roger Mayer is a gentleman who most famously modded fuzz faces and built other effects for Jimi Hendrix. He recalls Jimi Hendrix once said to him,
"Well, what do you think of these fuzz face pedals, Roger?"
He added that not two of them are exactly the same. So Roger Mayer looked at the circuitry and did a bit of analysis. The actual configuration of the circuit just about works, but it has many electronic pitfalls. At the time, there are still germanium only at the beginning of 1967. The reckoning by mid-1967, they were all silicon. So by Axis Bold as Love album, Jimmy was using a silicon-based fuzz face. You're taking a look at this unit here, you can see the size of here's the 9-volt dollar store zinc carbon 9-volt battery, and you notice that the circuit board is about the same size as the 9-volt battery. Actually, there's a whole section over here where the screws are, and that section is just an extension for me to be able to mount it. So there's nothing going on in there. You could actually cut that down. So the reality of it is the actual size of this circuit can be made on something. It's about 2/3 of the size of a 9-volt battery. So again, that whole giant enclosure thing, the idea behind that was they were gonna actually use them as a mic stand base, because this was back when the idea of a guitar pedal was such a bizarre concept. People were only plugging into amplifiers, so they had different designs. Some of them, like I believe the word was designed to sit on top of your amplifier. They hadn't sunk into that idea of the foot switch, the effect pedal box. This was a first major step towards that, utilizing this stop switch, which is really cool history. Everyone makes a fuzz pedal, from the cheapo Far Eastern brands like Moore, right up to the boutique offerings from Full Tone, Analog Man, Roger Mayer, and more. The rule of thumb is that if you try and fix the idiosyncratic consistencies of a classic germanium fuzz face circuit, well, the more you fix, the less it sounds like it's supposed to. The circuit is a simple two-stage amplifier with a feedback network path. It can be broken down into three parts: the input stage, the output stage, and the feedback network path. The last block, the feedback network, will affect the rest of the analysis because it will influence the most important parameters: voltage gain, input impedance, output impedance, and frequency response. When considering the technology of the fuzz face, one can simply not overlook the work done by a gentleman by the name of R.G. Keene. Looking over at his copyright 1988 six-section masterpiece article found at geofx.com titled "The Technology of the Fuzz Face," this is simply the final word on this most interesting and elusive circuit. So what do you think? Should I get rid of the ridiculous looking cap and hideous glasses? So fuzz face circuitry, here I have, these were made by a guy named GDMC. These are charge pumped, and they use new old stock Russian transistor, new old stock Chinese transistor. This also has a tone control in it. These pedals, this is called a Sonic Czar. They're pretty affordable. That you can't really find them very much because there are only a handful of these that were produced. But these are awesome, and these sound really good anywhere in a circuit. You don't have to necessarily just run these with single coils. The demo that I'm going to play utilizes these pedals, and I used a humbucking guitar, which you're not supposed to be able to use. I also used it was an active pickup guitar with a sustainer system. So that is certainly breaking that rule of the fuzz face only wants to see a single coil pickup to get that classic fuzz sound. What you'll hear in the demo is classic fuzz sound. It's germanium, all right. Not undistinguishably, it is that sound, but I'm using an active pickup system with a sustainer. So these are really cool. This is the first one that I made. I got some MTE germanium transistor, socketed the transistor. There's a trim pot to adjust the bias in there. I ended up getting it biased much better, and this one actually does really well. It cleans up. It does everything that a fuzz face is supposed to do. And that brings me to this one. This is built on a PCB board. He has a built-in charge pump. So what that means is the original germanium transistors use a negative ground. Which you think, oh, that's negative ground, like automotive technology. Pretty much everything is negative ground. When you think of positive ground, that's what I would call reverse polarity. That's where the center conductor on your power jack is going to be negative, and the outer conductor is going to be positive. And this is standard. Somewhere along the lines in the 70s, the Boss or Roland Corporation, they decided to go with that positive ground standard. Since then, and that's what we've gone with. Everything, all pedal boards, all pedals are positive ground, unless you're talking about something really old, specifically the old fuzz pedals, the old germanium ones. Those transistors are called PNP. An NPN transistor is the opposite, and that's going to use a positive ground. A PNP is going to use a negative ground. And the problem with that is if we daisy chain our pedals and daisy chain the power supply, what you'll get if you combine a Boss positive ground pedal with a PNP negative ground, you are connecting the positive to the negative, which is a hard short, and you will smoke out your power supply. You will have an explosion, you will have system failure, catastrophic, magic smoke, you name it. So what people will do is they will have a 9-volt battery inside the effect. And then that way you're not using a power supply and there is no catastrophic failure. So it's because it's an isolated power supply. Nothing is combined with reverse polarity. So the other way around it is to use a circuit which is called a charge pump. The charge pump is a tiny little circuit with an integrated circuit chip. Relax, your sound doesn't go through it. There's no chip. You're still going to have just transistors. This is with the power. So the power will come in with the standard Boss positive ground, and then what comes out is flip-flop, beep boop, you have negative ground, and that will go to the circuit. So one of the most common modifications that you will find for germanium effect fuzz circuits is a charge pump, which just reverses the polarity, and that enables you to use a power supply and daisy chain them and not worry about it. So that's what this one is. This is something that I built. Hey baby, would you hand me ear? I make noises, and my wife understands those. Like the clicky clacky is a one-handed wire stripper. If I say ear. And then there's also that one always makes you laugh. So yeah, this would be the my homemade build of this fuzz face. You can see here there is I see an integrated circuit chip on there, and then new old stock Russian transistors. So that the integrated circuit chip is to reverse the polarity of the power supply. So again, you could just daisy chain that. Kind of a no-brainer type of a modification. I would say that's pretty much how you would want to do it. One thing that couldn't be said for these, people often say that this type of circuit sounds better when you use a zinc carbon battery, which is just the dollar store Sunbeam batteries that are 99 cents, as opposed to something like an alkaline or any kind of newfangled lithium ion or whatever. So there is something to be said for that, of using a half-dead battery. Some people swear by that. Another modification is to build in a pot that reduces the current of the input's power supply voltage as a dead battery simulator. So that's something you can do. And when talking about a fuzz face, we certainly cannot omit a guy by the name of Zachary Vex, genius, with the cap at NAM, full of fishing lures, absolute genius, selection of headwear, unlike my own embarrassing self. Zachary Vex sitting at his kitchen table, having an epiphany moment where removing all of the resistors from this circuit and substituting them with similar value potentiometers, and inventing the Fuzz Factory, which is a fuzz face that's covered in potentiometers. And because of that, one can coax it into all sorts of unpleasantness, oscillation, self-oscillation, mutilation, fart noises, and wonderful fuzzy goodness. So yeah, the fuzz face is just one of those pedals that it's kind of a clone of some other things, as we see. Once a good circuit, or a circuit that really does what it's supposed to, hits the market, how that becomes inspiration for other builders to modify it and change the name of it, come up with something else, and how many things have spawned out from this one design. It's just mind-blowing if you can comprehend this, that this was what enabled Jimi Hendrix to do his thing. I mean, he already had that in him, but once he got this circuit, then it actually could happen. And how many people were motivated when they received one of these pedals? They went from thinking, oh, playing this guitar is all right, but you know, playing flamenco style or using a nylon string guitar, and then comparing that to something like a Stratocaster with a fuzz box through a Marshall, and then you instantly have Jeff Beck, you have Jimmy Page, you have people like Blackmore, you know, So you simply can't minimize this impact on our society that these circuits have had. And that's really cool, and this is one of those standout top of the heap circuits. But then when you look into it, it's actually really kind of a Maestro FC1, which will be coming up, because I have an actual original Maestro FC1B. I have one of those here, so that's coming up. I don't want to give away all my secret treats. And I will say that I did a while back, I produced a demo using these Sonic Czar pedals, and I had mentioned I used a Fernandez guitar that has active pickup. It has a sustainer system. So this was done all with the bridge pickup on that guitar, multi-track recording, Korg Pandora interface, set on a basement amp, a Fender basement amp sim. Well, really, that's basically just like a clean Fender sound. That's what you could think of. And then I used both of these pedals with that guitar. So enjoy the demo, and thank you for joining me again for...
Hey there, buddy. What's that sound? Hey there, buddy. What's that smell? It's Peteys Pedz. Peteys Pedz.
Rock and roll!